Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi stated that the earth will mourn the death of a believer for 40 mornings. Now the story that we know of the tragic and the barbaric massacre of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his family and his followers in the land of Karbala on the day of Ashura is something which is known amongst all Muslims. However, the effect of this massacre and this battle, which happened 1400 years ago, are often not discussed and talked about in the way in which they should be. And we need to realize that this battle and this event which took place is the ultimate sacrifice and tragedy for mankind. The ultimate story of good against evil, of haqq against batil, of sincerity and honesty against malice and cowardice. And this victory of good against evil is what guaranteed the future of the religion of Islam. And now Karbala, even in our modern world, gives us a framework and a system on how we should defeat pure evil when we come across it. And so the annual pilgrimage of Arbaeen is one of the reminders for us every year, something which refreshes the tragedy of Karbala in our mind and serves as a reminder that wherever it is, evil will always be defeated by truth. The character of Imam al-Hussein is something which I don't need to sit here and talk about because I'll be here for days and it is endless and there are so many things we can talk about. There is not one aspect of his character which can be faulted or which can be criticised. He is the most passionate hero in the history of humankind after the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some of the statements which Imam al-Hussein gives us, not just to Muslims, not just to Shias, but to the entirety of mankind, are some of the strongest that you will ever find against oppression. For example, he says that people are slaves of this world, and religion is simply on their tongue. They will keep it as long as they live their comfortable life, but when the test comes and when the final day comes for them to act upon it, religious people become very few. Meaning that when it is that time where you have to put yourself in the forefront of the battle, of standing up for what is right, the amount of people who come and say that they will do this is numerous. How many of us come every year and we say we are here for you, Hussein, we will defend you, we will defend your companions, and even today we will defend your followers. Yet when the followers of al-Hussein were slaughtered, only a few people turn out, only a few people raise their voices and act for the sake of what is right. However, Imam al-Hussein is not just known for his steadfastness, for his bravery. His humility, his patience, and his generosity is something we also overlook. For example, it's narrated that a lot of the time people would come and bring Imam Hussein gifts, and they would bring him presents. And when he received these, he would not keep them for himself. He would end up giving all of these presents away to people who he thought needed it more than him. One time, Imam Hussein was questioned on why he was spending so much time with the poor people and the beggars in the city of Mecca. And the reason he answered that I was sitting with them is he said, I thought I would sit and hear all of the problems and the woes of these poor people in detail, so that I could try and provide them comfort and try and ease some of the burdens which are in their hearts. This is the character of Imam Hussein. This is the figure who millions upon millions of people walk towards to send their devoted words and actions to in the Arbaeen pilgrimage. But a lot of people don't recognize where this concept of Arbaeen actually comes from. We need to know where the origins of this pilgrimage lie. And the importance that the Arbaeen pilgrimage has lies in the fact that based on history, we can see that Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, one of the respected companions of the Ahlul Bayt, visited the grave of Imam Hussein 40 days after his martyrdom. And in some of the other sources, we can see that it's reported that not just Jabir, but other members of the Ahlul Bayt, the members of Bani Hashim, went to the grave of Imam Hussein and the other martyrs in Karbala 40 days after his martyrdom. And so this is the idea behind the visit of Arbaeen, and it stems from the devotion of people like Jabir and people like the family of the Holy Prophet who went to go and pay respect to the Imam 40 days after his martyrdom. And especially the number 40 we see appears numerous times, not just in the religion of Islam, but in other religions as well that were preceding Islam, based on the significance which this number holds. Now we know Arbaeen is one of the largest pilgrimages on earth. We know that up to 25 million people attend it. Whenever the Western media dares to speak about this event, which is very rare, they cannot even try to downplay not just the number of the people who come, but the effects which this has. They say that people take to the roads and they take to the streets, giving up all of the jobs which they had, giving up all of their day-to-day activities, and they walk in an elaborately organized manner, in a very organized fashion. And it is very well protected, not just by the security forces and the army and the hashid, but by individuals who run their own mawkibs. And they say that this is something which has never been seen anywhere else in the entire world. And it paves a lesson for us when we see that in this land of Iraq, when we have 25 million people going to visit the Imam, they do so in a very organized fashion. Even today I watched a video in the Haram where there is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people from Bahrain doing the Latin. Every single individual is doing it in time, in the same fashion, in the same rhythm, in a neatly organized way. Why then can we, a Husseiniyah maybe of 100, 200, 300 people, why are we a mess when it comes to Muharram? Why do we not stay organized? Why do we not create roles for each individual to play? Yet when we go to countries which here they would say are third country, developing, not as advanced, they are miles ahead of us in terms of their organization, in terms of the layer, in terms of the beautiful types of participation which each individual feels a duty he must do. So we should learn from this and we should take something away from it. 25 million people, this is nearly 60% of the population of Iraq. And it grows year after year after year. Why? Not just because Muslims want to go and take part in it, but non-Muslims as well, Christians, Jews, atheists, all types of people, whether we agree with their beliefs or not, come to attend the Arbaeen pilgrimage out of not just love and respect for Imam Hussein, but out of curiosity as to why such an individual like the Imam can bring in millions of people 1400 years after his death. The leader of the Islamic Revolution says that this is a divine event. He says this is a divine phenomenon. This is not something which any human being could ever recreate. Only a figure like Imam Hussein was blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that 25 million people would come year after year to visit him. Sayyid al-Qadr says that this shows that this is the true path of love. However, it is not blind love. It is a love that is marked by basira. It is a love which is marked by insight, understanding, and true devotion to Imam Hussein. Muawiyah ibn Wahab, may Allah have mercy on his soul, narrated from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam one day, where Imam al-Sadiq says, do not abandon the ziyarah of al-Hussein. For if you do this, then you will be of the people who the angels do not pray for. Meaning that if you do the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, you are guaranteed that those angels who reside above us will be praying for us and for our success and for our health. Therefore, do not abandon this absolutely important ziyarah, for you will be neglected of this. Now, I mentioned that Imam Hussein is an extremely humble character. He embodied the trait of humility. And this is an extremely important part of his character. And it is an extremely important quality which we must try and exemplify. And what I find truly inspirational about this Arbaeen pilgrimage is how the followers of the Ahlul Bayt try to follow in the footsteps of Hussein with his humility and with his generosity, the way in which young individuals dedicate days of their life, take time away from all the pleasures which they could be enjoying, to serve other people, to give away what they have prepared, even if it means that they are at a loss financially. This is true generosity, this is true humility, to put yourself in the position of khadim, of a servant of those people who walk in front of you. And these days, the perfect example which we found of a humble figure trying to follow in the footsteps of Imam Hussein was Shaheed Arbaeen Majlis. When he was one of the most influential and powerful men in the entirety of Asia and the entire world, he dedicated his time to go and to join the Arbaeen pilgrimage. And what you found when Shaheed Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi was going on the Arbaeen pilgrimage is that despite all of the power and status which he had in his country, he walked amongst the normal people as if he was one of them. He walked only with his religious clothing on. He went and prayed in one of the small mawqibs that the young Iraqis had prepared. He sat and he drank tea with them. He didn't bring thousands of security guards. He didn't drive in a fancy car. He went and he acted like an individual, like a servant, like a normal person. The generosity that an individual who goes and participates in the Arbaeen pilgrimage has is something like no other, something which cannot be found anywhere else in the world. And I'll give you an example of this. A couple of years ago, when there was the earthquake in Haiti, massive earthquake, everybody around the world saw the amount of devastation which happened. Within 5 months, the United Nations Food Programme delivered 4.9 million meals, 5 million meals in 5 months. Yet during Arbaeen, people come out and serve their own food out of their own money. How much did they serve? 70 million meals during the time period of around a week, 2 weeks. This type of generosity cannot be found, as I mentioned, anywhere else in the world. Why? Because the people who participate in it are people who understood Imam Hussein and people who spend their lives devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In terms of the significance of Ziyarat Arbaeen, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam tells us a little bit about visiting Karbala. He says, if one of our Shia goes for Imam Hussein's ziyarah, then he won't return from that ziyarah except that all of his sins which he had accumulated will be forgiven. For every step that he takes, 1,000 virtues or good deeds are written in his name. For every step he takes, 1,000 sins are forgiven. And for every step he takes, his status is elevated by 1,000 degrees. So taking part in this Arbaeen walk year upon year is something extremely important and something we should desire, something we should spend our money on. The more people go, the more we publicize it on social media and various different forms of media, the more non-Muslims will become accustomed to seeing this pilgrimage and gain a curiosity and an interest in it, and ultimately, inshallah, bring them to the religion of Islam. It is said that Karbala is the torch, is the light of human salvation, and that this light remains forever and will never die down and will never burn out, and it will awaken people throughout the ages. And indeed we have the famous hadith that in the hearts of the mu'mineen, in the hearts of the believers, there is a flame which burns for al-Hussein which can never be extinguished. But I need to emphasize the importance of the visit one more time with a very beautiful hadith. But first from the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if you uphold the signs of Allah, sha'ar Allah, then it is a sign of God consciousness, it is a sign of taqwa that a person will have. On to the hadith. One day, the individual who I quoted earlier, Muawiyah ibn Wahab, may Allah have mercy on his soul and be pleased with him, he's one of the companions of Imam Salih alayhi salam. One day he says that he goes to Imam Salih and he finds him sitting on the ground doing sajda. And whilst he's doing sajda, he is weeping and there are tears flowing from his eyes. He is supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment. And he used to say, Allahumma kfirli wal ikhwani wal izuwar qabra jiddi ala Abdullah al-Hussein. Imam Salih alayhi salam is praying for you and I, that we make that journey to Karbala, that we make that journey to Sayyid al-Shuhada. Then Muawiyah says that Imam al-Sadiq begins to weep and cry even more intensely than he was doing before. And then he began to say, Allahumma arham tilka al-qulub allati qalabat nafsaha ala qabr al-Husayn. Oh Allah, bless those cheeks that place itself on the grave of Abu Abdullah. Bless those faces that are burnt under the sun whilst they walk to Abu Abdullah, whilst they make the ziyarah of al-Husayn. Oh Allah, bless the eyes that shed the tears due to the remembrance of Abu Abdullah. Then the Imam continued on and he said, bless the voices that scream in the remembrance of Abu Abdullah. Bless the hearts that are weeping due to the masa'il of Abu Abdullah. Then he says, Ya Allah, I trust those Zawar with you until I meet them at the pond of Kawthar. This is what Imam al-Sadiq tells us. This is how he values those who go to Imam al-Husayn, especially during this time period. I will conclude with one of the statements from Imam Hasan al-Askari, who gives us 5 criteria to define what a true mu'min and to define what a true Shia really is. He says the signs of a believer are 5. First, that they perform 51 rak'ats of prayer every single day. The second is that they wear an aqiq ring on their right hand. Then he says the next criteria is that they place their forehead on dust during sajda. They place it on the pure soil, the pure ground. He says the next criteria is the person who says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim out loud during the salah. And lastly, he says the 5th true criteria of a mu'min is the individual who does the ziyarah of Arbaeen. Imam Hasan al-Askari includes the performance of the ziyarah of Arbaeen amongst the 5 criteria of a true mu'min, a true believer, a true Shia of not just Imam Ali, not just Imam Hussein, but of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Ahlul Bayt as a whole. And to finish, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ability and the chance to go on the Arbaeen pilgrimage, to make us come close to the shrine of Imam Hussein, and we ask that all of our wishes are answered, and we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on the mu'mineen and the madlumeen, and we ask for all the shuhada to recite Surah Al-Fatiha after Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.